So YouTube right now is a little bit strange because some folks are having problems seeing my videos pop up in their subscriptions, even though I'm uploading videos. So to help you guys out with that real quick, you have the subscription icon right here, and then next to it, there should be a bell. In fact, for all my videos, that should be the case. Subscribe, the bell right next to it. So if you're not subscribed, what you should do, subscribe, then you have the bell, you click on the bell, then you have notifications from King of Lightning, you click on that box right here, then you click on save, obviously. That should help you guys be far more aware of when I'm uploading videos to the channel. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, what is up? The king of lightning is here today, bringing you guys and gals One Piece Chapter 854 review. If you've not seen live reaction, there'll be a link in the box below for the live reaction. Now, that being said, folks, diving right to the chapter review. First and foremost, the pacing and the chapter structure. You have basically 5 parts of this chapter. You have the beginning part, which is Jinbei and Nami, and then later on it transitions over to them with Chopper, Carrot, and Pedro in Brulee's Mirror World. Then part 2 is Big Mom, Pudding, and Brooke, and then Big Mom talking about how the wedding in her mind is going to pan out, among other things. You have part 3, very minor, which is just some soldier looking to Sanji's room, and then assuming that Sanji's in the room sleeping, but he's not actually there, and then some random guy. Part 4 is the meeting between Big Mom's kids and the Big Mom Pirate members as well, and they're talking about the invaders and who's been dealt with and whatnot, and is everything a-okay for the wedding ceremony? No other issues are going to arise when it comes to the wedding itself, and everything should be a-okay. However, there's some clear tension between Opera and Mondor, and because of that, Mondor doesn't trust Opera, so they're going to be highly on guard when it comes to the wedding itself tomorrow. That's part 4. Then part 5 is Sanji in the corner. He was lamenting over a situation at hand. However, you have Bowman come in there, and when he touches the bento box that Sanji made for Pudding, and it's the meat, he recalls what Luffy said about how he's going to starve himself to death. And then this triggered Sanji to attack Bobbin, and then Bobbin is now on the floor. Sanji's running off to a location. The assumption here is that he's running off to go see Luffy. So that is the pacing and the chapter structure in a nutshell. Now let's get on to the characterization. First of all, we have Opera. Now, Opera, he showcased in this chapter that he wasn't willing to go that far when it comes to the family. Like, basically, his life was more important than Big Mom's success, if you would. He was willing to lie in front of everybody in the meeting room because he knew that if he told the truth, Big Mom would basically kill him. So he covered his ass, and as a result, again, Mondor doesn't trust him, so they're going to be at high security for the wedding tomorrow. So even though Big Mom seems to have a tight reign over all of her kids and all of her subordinates, which for the most part is true, the fact that Opera was willing to lie and put his own individual life before anything else showed you that her control is not completely dominant. In fact, we saw it before with Lady Smoothie. Lady Smoothie took it upon herself to not tell Big Mom what was going on in the prisoner library, because if she did, then things would get a lot worse. But the fact of the matter is that she did not tell Big Mom this stuff. She believed that she could take it on her own. Even though Big Mom is terrifying in many ways, and for those who go against her, she will kill them. I mean, shit. We've seen her kill her own children on a whim when she's on like a sugar high, when she's going through one of her mood swings, one of her rampages. But just because her domination is strong doesn't mean that individual agency can't take over, and you have individuals like Lady Smoothie and Opera who make their own judgment calls, who make their own executive decisions, whether it be for better or worse. So we can also throw this for Jinbei as well for his characterization a bit there, because Jinbei wasn't dumb enough to spin the roulette. This is discussed in the Mirror World between him and Brulee. Brulee talks about how, well, she thought that Jinbei was on their team because as far as she knew, he didn't spin the roulette. He was too scared to do that. And Jinbei, he was able to sense, he's able to perceive, so we'll also throw out for Jinbei as well, that may be some form of haki, or it could be his intuition. Though in a certain sense, you can say that they have the same thing. Either way, Jinbei was able to perceive that the wheel was dangerous. And he was much better off betraying Big Mom's expectations, having open rebellion later on, as opposed to spin the roulette and wind up suffering ultimately what would have been death. And then Brulee confirms it later on in the dialogue. So, again, even though Big Mom has a lot of power and a lot of influence, and she's a very scary woman, she is a Yonko after all, that doesn't mean that people under her wing are going to follow suit 100% with her, obviously. For Jinbei, it makes a lot more sense. But when it comes to her own children, that's where it's kind of like, really? And you see that with Opera, and then you see that with Lady Smoothie in the previous chapters. Next for characterization, and actually more so on the character development side, is Sanji. Now, this is a little bit shaky here because we don't know how it's going to play out in the future. But at the end of the chapter, Sanji appears to have made the decision to help out Luffy and give Luffy the food that he made for Pudding because he doesn't want to see Luffy starve to death, obviously. However, he also attacked Bobbin. Now, whether that was instinctual or whether that was his rage overcoming him is not really a factor here, because when Bobbin's like, what the hell are you doing? That's when Sanji's like, you know what am I doing? And him making the choice to go and not only save and feed Luffy, but also attack Bobbin is the same thing as allowing someone in the Barate restaurant to die. Because right now we have some soldiers that are on their way to check out on what's going on. And of course Bobbin's going to tell them what happened, and then eventually Big Mom's going to hear this. At least that's the assumption. Maybe the soldiers that talk to Bobbin, or maybe Bobbin himself, is going to do the same thing that Lady Smoothie did and say, you know what, we'll handle ourselves. But assuming, this is an assumption here, assuming that it winds up trickling down to Big Mom's ears, Big Mom, of course, is going to be pissed about that. Big Mom may forgive Sanji in the sense that he's marrying, quote-unquote, marrying Pudding tomorrow, but at the same time, we saw how Big Mom treated Pedro when Pedro was caught by her after he had taken out one of Tamago's eyes. There may be some punishment there, and that punishment could be the death of one of his friends in the Barate restaurant, or maybe Duval and company. It depends. Sanji's decision is, in a way, him saying, I would rather save my friends. I'd rather save Luffy, as opposed to just die at the hands of Big Mom and company. But he's doing so, understand the consequences of if he doesn't oblige by what Big Mom and what Germa want. And the consequences, once again, are the death of loved ones. He's basically choosing who should die. Someone back home or his best friends, Luffy and company. He's making that choice, and that's a big decision to make. And it looks like he's chosen Luffy and company. So there are many things as to what could happen. Will someone actually die in the Barate restaurant or somewhere else? I don't think so, given Oda's writing style, but ultimately, it's the choice that Sanji makes. Finally, for characterization, Big Mamu. Now, Big Mamu, the insane big bitch, she, we all know, is insane, warped, twisted in many ways. We see it with her mannerisms. We see it with how she treats her kids, including her youngest kids, and how the youngest kids themselves are warped as a result. And this chapter, we go deeper into the abyss that is her insanity, that is her brutality. And it happens in various stages. So the first stage is at the beginning with Brûlée, and how Brûlée talks about how that roulette is designed. It is designed specifically to kill. Normally with the roulette, you spin it, and like there is a potential like good thing for you. You land on the blue and you're A-okay. You land on the black and you're fucked. Normally there's something like that, like there's a way out. However, according to Brûlée, that roulette is designed for death and nothing but death. There is no way out. And then it is said by Brûlée, anyone who comes here, they're allowed to come here. But if you leave dead. End of story. The fact of the matter is that there was no escape for Jinbei if he had spun that thing. Just like Zeppo in the flashback, if he had spun that thing, he would have died. No doubt about it. That's the first part. The second part for a character comes in part 4, where you have the clear, distinct fear that Opera has when it comes to his situation. He failed in his duty to contain Luffy and Nami because of Jinbei's actions. And as a result, he strongly believes that he will die. He understands his mama. And Big Mom, as far as you can tell, would probably kill Opera. What's kind of messed up there, obviously, would be the fact that it's not really Opera's fault that he failed. Jinbei sneak attacked him, and actually you can argue that it was Big Mom's fault because she didn't consider that Jinbei may say, fuck you anyway. So you can arguably blame Big Mom for the reason why Nami and Luffy escaped. But ultimately, it was Opera who was supposed to guard them. And because he failed in that, he's going to take the punishment, and he believes that he will die. So that's number 2. Number 3 is part 2 in its entirety, where Big Mom is talking to Pudding about how, like, you better not die, because if you get taken out, we all get fucked. And the tone of it is not more so like I care for you because you're my daughter, and I don't want to see my own daughter die in front of me. That'll be so traumatic. No. It's if you die, I really can't get what I want, or it's gonna be really hard for me to get what I want, which is that clonable German army. So you better not fuck up, because again, it makes my life more difficult. So very self-centered in that sense. And then she starts describing about how the wedding is gonna take place in great detail. All right, like it was really shocking when Sanji uncovers your veil. He's gonna see your third eye, and he's gonna falter. And that's when you shoot him right between the eyes. Make his brain splatter everywhere across the hall. There's going to be initial shock, and the German are going to sense danger. But it'll be too late to have the bullets already at their backside. She literally played the movie out in her mind. And it's not until all of the German corpses are littered across the ground, it's not until then that we have the festivities, and we have the cake, and we have the black tea, and so on and so forth. Like, it's mental with this woman. And also what has to be highlighted here is the fact that when she's talking about this, she's in a state of euphoria. Like, she's having an orgasm as she's talking about this. She is so excited. She cannot wait for the bloodbath to ensue. And then afterwards enjoy the sweets, the cake, the black tea. She can't wait for it. She will enjoy the sweets and the cake while the corpses of the Germa are littered across the ground. That's that kind of stuff where it's like she actively seeks this stuff out. That is the depth of insanity and brutality that we're getting from Big Mom that we haven't seen with any other character in One Piece as far as I can recall. For characterization, it's nothing new in the sense that we've already seen this, but we're getting in greater depth in this chapter, I believe so, in those 3 parts. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, part 3 of the overall review, the story progression. For story progression, number 1 is going to be Jinbei and Nami. They are now with Chopper, Carrot, and Pedro in the mirror world, and now their main mission here is to save Brook, Sanji, and Luffy. Number 2 for story is Brook finds out about Big Mom's intentions and Pudding's intentions, and that's really it. Because for part 2, it's nothing for the story in the sense of Pudding is talking about what already happened with Reiju, how she was taken care of, how her memory was erased, and also it's Big Mom just talking about how things should play out. So for the story, it's nothing new, with the exception of Brook didn't know what was going on. Now he knows full well what's going on. And also, it is for the combat that we didn't see between Brook and Big Mom, where Brook apparently wounded Prometheus, Zeus, and Napoleon. And apparently those 3 have never been wounded. Now, personally, I don't really buy that because, like, how does that? Big Mom must have used those 3 previously against higher level opponents than Brook. So the assumption here is that Brook's powers, they deal with soul, and these beings are essentially beings of soul to a degree. Like, not like Perona's powers, where like they're fully intangible and so on, but the entities of Napoleon, Prometheus, and Zeus are beings of higher frequency because they received soul directly from Big Mom herself, and Brook was able to wound them. Now, my assumption here is that because Big Mom's powers are Dovefruit powers, Haki, like armored Haki, hardening, should be able to wound Prometheus, Zeus, and Napoleon effectively, like it does for any other Dovefruit power. So I have to wonder, is it really the case here that Brook is the first person to wound them? I mean, maybe it was the first person to wound them so severely, but at the same time, all Prometheus needed was a band-aid on his face. Zeus seems to be relatively fine, the same for Napoleon. So I wish that we'd actually gotten to see the fight, because that would have given us a lot more details as to what's actually happening here. I hope Oda goes back to it, but I don't know. I mean, shit. We have yet to see the payback war, Blackbeard and freaking Marco, and we have yet to see Akainu versus Aokiji Punk Hazard. Oda, there are fights that you have missed, and you should not be missing these fights. Alright, okay, so now, moving on from story progression, we have the meeting where it looks like all of the people that are in the meeting room, so most of the siblings and most of the pirates, like the higher end pirates, other Big Mom pirates, they believe that most of the invaders have been taken out. However, when it comes to Mondor Opera, there is some suspicion there on the part of Montour. So it looks like when it comes to the wedding, there's going to be high insecurity, which may pose as a problem when it comes to trying to save Sanji or Brook or whoever's there on the part of Chopper and company, because again, they're using the mirrors to go in and out to save their friends. And then finally, we have Sanji making a big move here. He's now gone to what we can assume to be Luffy's direction. He has wounded Bobbin, and where things go from here, well, the assumption here is that Big Mom's gonna find out, and then, well, that's not gonna be good at all. But Sanji will be going to where Luffy is, probably gonna feed Luffy some food. Luffy's gonna get some stamina back, and he's gonna be in somewhat fighting mode. So that being said, folks, that is a chapter review. And overall, this chapter, I would say, is a good plus grade chapter One Piece. So that being said, I am done. King Lightning, rate the video, comment, and subscribe as always. Peace. Have a nice goddamn day.